So we have a great panel and a great announcement that I'm going to make. I alluded to it last night and this morning, but today we are formally announcing the Council's new initiative under the auspices of the National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers, our competitiveness conversations across the country. And these conversations are going to be led and developed and shaped by our members from universities, from national labs, from industry and labor, also involving community leaders and others. Some will be in individual states, some might be across states and regions. And kind of in a nutshell, what we're going to do is really assess where we are in terms of our innovation and competitiveness capabilities and capacities in these states and regions, what we still need to do, and kind of what's the path to get there. We are very excited that we have a wonderful structure for these, opening on an evening, hopefully with the governor, and then the next day having the discussion and the findings that emerge. And as these continue across the country, we're going to coalesce the learnings, sort of coming up with what we might call the ingredients, the menu and the ingredients for making the best ever meal for innovation in America, and how all these pieces and parts come together. So we're going to start the discussion with two council leaders, Jim Clements, the president of Clemson, longstanding member of the council and on the executive committee, and Josh Parker, who's the chair and CEO of Ancora LNG, who's also a national commissioner and active in the council.
Mm-hmm. Did you get enough lunch?
I didn't have any lunch, but that's good. So I'm going to start with you, Jim. I've known you for a long time, and what your accomplishments have been when you were president at University of West Virginia, and now you're at Clemson. You hosted for the council a few years ago one of our great national engineering forums with Lockheed Martin, and we could see in real time what you have done in transforming Clemson as a great hub of advanced manufacturing and innovation with major industrial giants there with you. And of course, you're part of the ecosystem of South Carolina. So maybe you could share with us a little bit about what's the magic sauce, but where you are and how you think going forward, and that we're going to advance this agenda through a competitiveness conversation. And the other thing I should have mentioned is that the group of hosts are putting together steering committees, and you really could choose your topic and theme.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Deborah, thank you for your leadership, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel with Josh and your vision to set up these kind of discussions on competitiveness across the country. Deborah, this morning, and I love that you are moderator, you said, you started this morning by saying universities are an anchor to economic development. I agree with you 100%. You also stressed, as you have all the time I've been on this council, the importance of partnerships as a key. Again, you are right. The federal, state, local industry, higher ed, community. Chad talked about competitiveness, Chad Holliday, in the global environment and the importance of wind and hydrogen. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing there. And then, Deborah, last thing, Ann Newberger this morning talked about cyber and emerging technologies and said we have a crisis at hand. If we have a crisis at hand, we need all hands on deck. So one of the things I know that you have pushed is to expand our reach, expand our circle of innovation, expand and elevate our impact, and to do that with a sense of urgency. Partnerships are absolutely 100% the key. And I think we've done a pretty good job in South Carolina bringing in the BMWs and the Michelins and the Boeings and the Duke Energies and others. I want to mention one recent one that fits the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Act of 2021. We led the nation with the first National University Transportation Center for Cybersecurity called Tracer, but we didn't do that alone. That's a $20 million grant over 5 years, first of its kind. We did that with Purdue. Purdue's here, great university. University of Alabama, University of Texas at Dallas, and others. It's partnership-based industry partners as well, but focuses on attacks to our transportation system, whether it's subway, monorail, cars, airlines, whatever it may be. Those are the kind of levels of innovation and forward thinking that we need, but you can never, ever do it alone. It's always best when you do it with partners.
And I know that President Michael Emerides from University of South Carolina, a council member, will be with us. And in terms of, who we bring in from industry, you all will decide that. But the other thinking we're developing in the council and have quite a bit of support for this, and I think from what we all learned today, is the extent to which in states and regions we have very significant military assets, national labs. You have Savannah River. That does very important things. We want to involve them as well. I know in Michigan, has the largest National Guard training center in the entire country, and the famous Detroit Arsenal that others don't know about. And we'll talk about a few others, but could you comment a little bit about Savannah River and, of course, the role of the state in
critical to the state. Honored to have them as a partner. So we set up a partnership a couple years ago that involves Clemson, University of South Carolina, Michael Emerides, a dear friend, Georgia Tech, Georgia, and South Carolina State in partnership with Savannah River. So we're doing a lot of research there and at our facility in North Charleston, the Clemson University Restoration Institute that has the largest wind turbine test facility in the world, where we do a lot of smart grid, attacks on the grid. We can emulate how long grids are down and how to get them back up. But all of that is in partnership.
And why do you think South Carolina has become such a magnet for major global enterprises to come and build really advanced infrastructure and manufacturing? And we hear about we don't have a trained workforce and all that, but they are coming to South Carolina.
They are, and I think one of the things that really drove it was CUI Car and our partnership with BMW when BMW came into the state, where they make more cars than anywhere else in the world. But if you have not been to CUI Car, International Center for Automotive Research, it's spectacular. That's where we hosted our forum a couple of years ago.
It was amazing.
You've got several $100 million of investment, federal, state, private. You've got several dozen companies from around the world, but that really stimulated innovation, I think, in the state. It was one of the drivers that really, really pushed.
And, in terms of where you are and what you've accomplished, and this, of course, is what we're going to learn and kind of decipher and decode when we come to South Carolina, what do you think are the real challenges that the state and all the players need to address going forward? Is it bringing everybody in, or what do you think are still some of the things you need to address?
Well, Deborah, first, I'm so thankful you set up these conversations so we can share best practices. And the things that we're hearing all the same things we heard this morning: workforce development, the innovation, speed of innovation. So one of the things we did, we set up a President's Industry Council where I have 24 CEOs of major companies in the region. And we really focus on internships, co-ops, research that they need, the workforce that they need, the curriculum that they need. And it's been really effective. We actually went to the state. They gave us money. Industry matched the money, but that's a model that could be replicated. But what we hear from industry is the same things you've heard all morning. Workforce development, have to get people ready for the jobs of the future. And that's what we're trying to do.
So I have to ask you a provocative question. Do you think your performance in football gives you any country?
I will say we just won the national championship in men's soccer on Monday night in Louisville, and I was there. Proud of my men's soccer team. We beat Notre Dame 2-1. And so in the last 7 years, we have 2 national championships in football and 2 in men's soccer. So pleased with that. Excited to go to the Gator Bowl in a couple weeks.
I know for many years you've been encouraging me to come down for a football game, and after surviving many years at Naval Academy games, I may have had enough of football, but I'll come.
You have an open invite, Deborah.
All right. And I'll come back. Josh, you have a very, very interesting business, but also tremendous insight in what's going on in the development of physical infrastructure, other infrastructure that links universities as economic development in states and regions. And we're very, very excited to have that perspective in the Council on Competitiveness. And as I mentioned this morning, you shared it so beautifully as a model for Belfast. So share with us some of your thoughts about the competitiveness conversation, why it's important, and What are some of the things from your perspective as a leader of now a global corporation that you bring to the table to help? I know you're active in Purdue and many other places in the country, so.
Yeah, well, thank you, Deborah. And I'm just always delighted to be here at this annual exploration of strategies to strengthen American competitiveness. And you and Chad and Bill, the entire team, were just phenomenal for bringing us all together. And I would echo, Dan Helfrich, our business vice chair, made an insightful observation last night, that this is really a place where thought leadership becomes actionable intelligence and priorities. And I think that's why we're excited about the competitiveness conversations, because it's an opportunity to gain insight and develop actionable strategies in each of these communities. I think while I'll just kind of step back a little bit and talk more broadly, I think next year being a political season is certainly ripe for us to influence policy direction, but I'm mostly fascinated by sort of the macro moment in which we find ourselves. Got these secular shifts, including our aging population, declining birth rate, which was mentioned earlier, decarbonization of our economy and the green energy transition, the continental and maritime power balance and how that's playing out globally. Combining that with a reset in our economy really gives us a framework for new American competitiveness. And I think this economy of the future, the one that we're starting to build in this moment, really could offer wider and more diverse participation. It could be resilient when industries or asset values are disrupted. It could offer sustainable growth across limitless technological innovation. And it could regrow the strongest middle class that exist across the globe and offer job opportunities all across the scale. The council was instrumental in defining the first formal U.S. industrial policy we've had in over 40 years with the CHIPS and Science Act, which I think has seeded the direction that we're on now in a really important way. And as the administration continues to implement that and the Inflation Reduction Act, these other, what are we calling them, Bidenomic economic policies, I think as a group, we can utilize that enormous investment to actualize the potential of this economy. The biggest economic gains over the last 30 years we know have been concentrated in coastal cities in an ever-consolidating set of privately owned companies. In this era that's been defined by free trade, financial engineering, globalization has hollowed out communities around the country, and that's led to a lot of the issues that we see that is, I think, contributed largely to polarization and intractable politicization in pitting areas of the country against each other. I think, for all the talk of the world being flat in a globalized way, I continue to insist that the U.S. is flat. We have the opportunity to have seamless integration across local and state lines for business activity. We've got protections for intellectual property that other countries don't have and commercial activity. We live in a place rich with natural resources, probably the most important of which being our talent, which can be mobile and allow regions to grow and evolve, specializing or accelerating innovations as they come up. And so I think we have this opportunity now where our communities can become globally competitive without having to be in competition with each other on a zero-sum basis. We talk a lot about the enormously efficient partnership that the federal government has with our universities to drive basic research. And I think that is continuing as the model that's going to grow this new economy. If you think about universities being geographically distributed and the ability to create job opportunities and innovation out of that basic science, they've moved further and further into the forefront of translation and commercialization and partnership with industry. The platform technologies that we're just on the cusp of that we've talked about today, AI, genetic modification, energy, the list goes on, quantum. I think that expanding that top end of the funnel with that partnership where universities can be at the forefront in a geographically distributed way, lowering the barriers to entry for partnership with industry and partnership with entrepreneurs is the key that we need. And I think these conversations are so important for getting into these communities, helping to surface the competitive advantages that each of them have, helping to surface the barriers to entry that each of these communities have for their success, and then developing the actionable solutions around them. That intersection of partnership not only is what the council is about, but I think that's what our economy needs to be about. And if we can drive that conversation in a geographically distributed way, I think we can be much more competitive as a country going forward.
Thank you. And you know, when we talk about the imperative for diversity and including all of our population and people in the innovation future, we haven't done a good job about looking at it geographically. And this is very, very important for the places. I mean, for some of us who grew up in the heartland of the industrial Midwest, I mean, some of that's coming back, of course, which is good, but in parts of the country, it is totally hollowed out, and you know, the devastation is severe. And I always remember years ago, some leaders during the time of a lot of competition with Japan and Korea, and of course now they're allies, they always said, we would never give up manufacturing. Why did you Americans give up your manufacturing prowess? Another question for another meeting is, why did we give up our commercial shipping? But that's for another day. I want to ask you, Jim, you know, in terms of the assets in the state, I mean, you also have historically black college and universities. That's very important in our new partnership with the White House to include those institutions in all of this. But David Wilson from Morgan State, who's a commissioner, has said, you know, just building up the physical infrastructure is not the answer. It's to include them in the very advanced partnerships. How are you doing that? Because at your automotive center, you have people from all over.
We do. And one, I'll start with the Savannah River National Lab that you mentioned. South Carolina State is a critical partner in that project. Another one is our USDA. We just got a $70 million grant with South Carolina State and 27 other partners in the state to really work on smart climate production across the state, especially in underserved areas. So we've really formed some good partnerships. And Deborah, another one where South Carolina State will be working with us. We got a $100 million grant from the Department of Army to build the next generation of autonomous ground combat vehicles. And they came to us. Yeah, and that's one where, you know, we can't do that alone. We need all the partners we can. So we've really done a lot more outreach in the past. And as you know, our innovation campuses are intentionally put across the state in strategic locations to bring in industry and communities, some that are underserved.
So we don't have a date yet for when we're going to come to South Carolina, but we'll get that going. We are going to hear in our next conversation kind of the first inaugural actual conversation that is being hosted by Chancellor Daniel Diermeyer and Chancellor Dondi Plowman in Tennessee. But last thing, quickly, Josh, I know we're running out of a little time here. You're also investing in physical real estate and doing that in a way that's not just creating, you know, another tech part or whatever, but it's really adding tremendous value to the economic assets of institutions. Just in a nutshell, is that a secret business model? Or are you the only one doing it? Because it's pretty exciting.
I think there's some special sauce to it, but it's not so secret. And I think the way that we have to focus is identifying the mission and strategic priorities of the university and of the region, and then developing the infrastructure and the critical facilities that support that. I think too often we get excited about building buildings and thinking that's going to help drive economic output. But if we focus on the mission outcomes that we're going for, that infrastructure can be supported. What we think about really beyond the real estate when we're making investments in partnership with universities is what is the programmatic infrastructure that's needed, and where are the cliff edges, where are the gaps? And so identifying the limiting factors or the barriers to entry that any of these communities are experiencing in leveling up their entrepreneurship or leveling up their industry participation is what then allows us to drive and use the real estate as a tool to finance and unlock that potential.
Great. Well, I want to make sure, and making this formal announcement, that everyone here, and then of course we'll convey this to our wider council membership and community, everyone will be invited to these conversations because we want to have the cross-pollination of others coming. So we're not just going to only have people from South Carolina, they're going to be from across the country, and that's very exciting too. Well, I want to thank you both for being long-standing leader and
Honored to
involved
be
in the
with you,
council, Jim, and everything you're doing. And thank you, Josh, and also for being a sponsor and taking the leap to come with us without knowing what was going to happen for the Good Friday anniversary. And I think it was pretty fantastic, as we heard from Joan Gable this morning. So you added a lot.
And Deborah, thank you for your leadership. This council makes a difference, and you make a difference.
Thank you.
Please host a conversation in your region.
Thank you.